all about the Ouija board with the person who probably knows more than anybody about it, Karen A. Dahlman, up next on the Paranormal Podcast. Welcome to the Paranormal Podcast. Happy October, happy Halloween. And, during this time of the year, we look at spooky stuff. And something that some people consider the most spooky is the Ouija board. And we're going to separate fact from fiction. And we're going to learn more about the Ouija board today with, I think, probably the world's foremost expert on it. Karen A. Dahlman joins us. And you see her there if you're watching on the video. Karen is an author, paranormal researcher, licensed counselor, spirit communicator, and author. She serves as an officer and director of the Talking Board Historical Society. She was born with the gifts of clairvoyance, clairaudience, and clairsentience, and she communicates with sentient beings in the unseen dimensions and uses these gifts with her clients, providing spiritual readings. She's been featured on all types of media, Gaia TV, Coast to Coast AM, Fade to Black, the Paranormal Podcast, and many other shows. And she's been using the Ouija board since the 1970s when she was very, very young. And we're so glad to have her on the show again to talk about this. My favorite guest on the topic of Ouija, Karen A. Dahlman. Welcome back to the Paranormal Podcast.
Thank you so much, Jim, for having me. It's always a pleasure to come and talk to you. And we always have a great time. A lot to say, a lot to share, a lot to cover, right? Always.
Exactly. Now, let me ask you this. I mean, this time of the year, you go into stores, you see the Ouija-themed decorations. People are really into it. They consider it to be spooky. But is that kind of on one hand, it's a double-edged sword, right? One way, it's a blessing. Because it's a very popular brand. It does great for the people who sell it and those kind of things. But also it's kind of a curse because it's kind of gotten maybe an unfair rap. How do you feel about the way that Ouija is portrayed and considered in the present day?
Well, I love this time of the year when we start getting more spooky and when the veil thins and we think about our ancestors. Or just ghosts and goblins. It's a fun time of the year. And I love that Ouija board is a part of that. I mean, it's mysterious. It has this just this mysterious nature about it. We don't fully understand how it works. There's a lot of theories out there, but there's also a lot of superstition around the board. So it fits in perfectly with this time of year when we're trying to communicate with the unseen dimensions, maybe ghosts. And because we don't really know unless you've, I guess, gone to the other side and come back to tell your story. But you don't know. And so the Ouija board fits right in with that whole theme of the mysterious and the macabre as well. So I don't have a problem with it. I think it's fantastic. In fact, I get some of my best Ouija boards during this time of the year because there's new ones that are always being released. Especially because of Halloween. So I think it goes hand in hand. But you're absolutely right to say there's a double-edged sword to this in a way, or two sides of the coin, because the Ouija board is actually an incredible tool to use to learn to channel into other dimensions, meaning other types of sentient beings, consciousness, and we could say spooky like ghost. So yes, it could be used for a real legitimate tool, but also just for fun.
Now, a lot of people, and I literally was telling somebody we're going to be doing this interview today. I said, Karen's one of my favorite all-time guests. She's so knowledgeable about this. We're going to be talking about the Ouija board. And they're like, oh, you better say your prayers, There's this kind of feeling about the Ouija board. Not about you, but about the Ouija board. So I guess I would say this. Some people feel that the Ouija board is dangerous. Other people feel that it can be dangerous if you don't take proper precautions, or maybe some people don't think it's dangerous at all, and this is just kind of something we've made up through popular media, books, TV, movies, all of that. What category, if any of those categories, would you fall into?
Well, I don't think the board is dangerous. I think people are dangerous. So it's your beliefs that are dangerous, really. It's what you fear. It's what you fear, what you think, that what we call Ouija-stitions, what you have around the board. Those beliefs is what you should be afraid of, not the tool itself. Because if you learn to work with your beliefs and shift those, you can use this tool in very many delightful ways. And we can talk about some of those ways and how I've used it over the years. But yeah, I fear people, not the board. Okay. I fear people's misunderstanding of it and misuse of it, meaning how they see it's going to be used. I mean, you can, in a way, manifest how you want your life to go, meaning you can't totally craft it, but you can help co-create it, meaning you can choose how you want to get up every morning and present yourself. You could choose how you want to be in the world at large when you leave your house. But also with the board, you can present yourself to this tool, using this tool, how you want to use it. You get to choose. It's all up to the operator. I always talk about the most important equation of the board. It's not the board or the planchette, the little indicator that moves around the board. It's yourself. It's you, the operator. Choose how you want to use this and with the right intentions, and you will get really good results. You can. However, if you have all those fears, this may not be the tool for you.
So I know we've covered this on past shows, but we always have new people coming in. And there's certain facts about the Ouija that are fascinating. What do we know about the history of the Ouija? How far does it go back? I know you have William Fuld and the talking board and so forth, but really, how far does it go back? Can you talk to us a little bit about the origins of the Ouija?
Yeah, so people think they want to say the Ouija board goes back to ancient China, ancient Greece, and it doesn't. There is no indication that the Ouija board, as we know it today, was back there. But there always were tools and apparatus that they used, maybe pointing devices or stones or things that they could use to get messages from. But the real Ouija board, as we know it today, the board with the little planchette, which is the indicator, and planchette is a French word that just means little table. So the little table that goes on top of the board, and I have a couple boards in the background back here, you can see them. Mm-hmm. Those came out originally in the mid 1800s. So let's just say it was 1880. So what you had happening here, this is what you got to think about. There was the movement of the Fox sisters of receiving messages from raps and sounds and table sounds, tipping and things of that nature to get messages spelled out. Yeah, spiritualism happened. Exactly. 1840 is where it started with the Fox sisters. So you fast forward and people were beginning to experiment with different kinds of devices. And one of the devices they started experimenting with was the planchette as an automatic writer. You have an aperture, you put a pencil in it, and it moves around with these little caster wheels, and it would spell. Now you can imagine how long that took and also how messy that message could be because you didn't lift it up and then put it down again. You had to keep writing. So sometimes it would write over itself, but that's kind of the beginning of message spirit writing. And then people were starting to experiment with alphabet cards, maybe cutting boards with numbers and letters on them, or a table with numbers and letters on them, and start using their pencil or pointing devices or their finger. But then what happened, a very interesting thing happened, was they paired the idea of this planchette on top of the board, maybe it was a cutting board or kitchen table, and saw that it can move around. And you could actually spell that way and also write out the messages. And that really is the birth of the modern day Ouija board. So it was the 1800s, 1880. And so you see in 1890, a group of businessmen and one woman, they get together and they decide to ride this wave of this craze that was going on in Ohio. And this craze was the spiritualist movement using these apparatus, such as the board with this device on top of it. And they said, let's go ahead and mass create this, mass produce this and market it. And they did. And then in 1891, they filed for the patent and trademark on it. And then it just took over. And that was what you know as the Ouija board today. It has been held by many different names over the years. And who owns it now is Hasbro. Hasbro owns it now. So a Ouija board is a patent and trademark name. So not all boards are the same. I know, Jim, you and I have spoken about this before with your audience.
Yes.
Yeah. All boards are spirit boards or talking boards, but not all boards are Ouija boards. Mine two behind here back here, are both Ouija boards. One's a William Fuld and one's a Parker Brothers. But like I said, Hasbro owns it now. So people mistakenly call all boards Ouija boards. That's fine, whatever. I think you can get away with it now. But truly, the Ouija board is the true device, the board that nobody could compete with. It is the one that sold out every other board from the beginning of its inception to now. It is the most popular board out there.
What does the word Ouija mean?
Well, that's an interesting question because they did ask the board, whatever it was they were talking to when they were using this tool, they said, what should we call you? And it's spelled out Ouija. And they said, what does that mean? And it said, it means good luck. So they patented the board under the name Ouija and also under the good luck patent as well. So it got to understand this too about the Ouija board. It was originally patented under novelty items and games. And to this day, that's why it's still patented under games, because that's how it was originally produced and patented.
Wow, that's fascinating. I do want to get to one other piece of history, and then we can talk more about the board itself. William Fuld, who, if I'm correct, from what you've taught me in the past, was really the kind of one of the central figures that really popularized the Ouija board with his talking board. But he passed under some mysterious circumstances, didn't he? Or some strange circumstances, I should say.
Yeah, he did. So he was a varnisher at the company. He owned some stock, but eventually he got to the point where he owned the company. When he took over the company fully, and there's a whole bunch of history here. We'll just talk about when he took over. So he and his family, they were building these production plants all over the place of Baltimore. We were starting to see them even in Chicago area. We were seeing Ouija board plants pop up all over the place. It was that popular. So it was in the 40s when the gentleman, William Fuld, was on his roof, trying to go up there and fix something. He fell and was impaled on the way down by a flagpole, and he died. Ugh. Shortly thereafter, because it pierced his heart. But he told his family, he said, look, listen to me on my deathbed. He goes, never sell Ouija. Never sell this company, never sell Ouija to somebody else. Well, they did in the late 1960s. They ended up selling it to Parker Brothers.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's always the founder, one of the main people, when they pass on, their wishes only last so long, and then people say,
right.
Well, grandpa or whatever didn't understand what we're dealing with or whatever, and then they cash out. So the board itself, you said whatever it's talking to. Now, do you have any theories of what it's talking? First of all, I think it's pretty surely that you believe this isn't just somebody moving the planchette, that real messages do come through. So where do you think those real messages come from?
Yeah, so I absolutely do believe I'm channeling. I'm bringing through other energies and other voices from beyond. So there's some theories out there. Let's talk with the most practical one, I'll say the scientific one that people want to hear, and that would be the ideomotor effect, which basically means your body's controlled by the muscle movement, the motor skills is fine-tuned, and your fingers is being moved by your brain. And so it's a subconscious, unconscious thing. I'm not against that because I do believe our unconscious self has a lot of information within ourselves that we could bring forth. And I do think within ourselves is the spark of source that we tap that. We can bring forth great inspiration and information for our lives. So I'm not against that. Yet this is what I believe. I do believe I'm communicating with other beings that are outside of my own consciousness, that are part of a greater consciousness. And I'm using the ether, or the wavelength of collective consciousness to reach into these other beings that have their own awareness and bringing it forth, whether it's somebody who is transitioned in spirit, whether it's my own higher self, that's myself, that's me, but greater, my soul self, or whether it's other beings in other dimensions. This could be spirit guides, it could be angelic beings, it could be even extraterrestrials. So I do believe I'm connecting with other consciousness and other dimensions and bringing that forth through channeling. Now, you're saying channeling, Karen, well, why would you use a board? Well, I learned as 1973, I learned at a very young age that this was a tool I could use to tap into other dimensions because I believed I could. I didn't get stuck in, oh, the fear, oh my God, something bad's going to happen. In fact, I grew up pretty much using this tool in a vacuum. I didn't have the fear factor. Nobody told me bad things about it. I just thought this is really cool if I could communicate with other beings. And I did right out of the box, and I did when I got that. I thought in the beginning I was just only communicating with people that were deceased, which is great. I mean, I did that for many years. But then when I realized I could expand that repertoire and move into other dimensions and meet other beings, and it wasn't because I tried, it's because it just happened. It was a progression, I would say, of using this tool and refining myself as the main instrument. Again, it goes back to me as the operator. I was using it with great intentions. I was using it with the idea that this could be positive in my life. And then I started attracting that energy to me as I channeled. And so channeling, using this tool, it's not that I'm allowing some being to come through my body. It's like I'm connecting with energy through the planchette. My fingers are on this planchette, and there's a movement kind of feeling, and I follow that. And it's because my ability to connect in consciousness to these other beings that allows it to move through me. So it's a combination of me working the planchette, using it with their energy to be able to allow it to move. So that's how I see it happening.
Now, let me ask you this. I assume on the spiritual side, there's positive beings. There's probably neutral beings. I kind of envision, I don't know, I'm not psychic at all. I'm not a channel or anything. But I envision like our everyday world here. You've got some fantastic people who are out to help people. And then you've got some people who are just like, hey, I won't throw the door in your face, but I'm not going to open it for you either. And then you've got people who are out to do not good stuff. I would assume maybe on the spiritual world it might be similar. Not that everything's a demon or anything like that, but there might be some more sinister energies. There's probably some neutral energies, and there's probably some very positive energies. So assuming that that's the case, and maybe I'm wrong, you tell me if I'm wrong, but if that's the case, how do you make sure that you're channeling and connecting to those positive spirits through the Ouija?
Yeah, I say we don't need any more hardship in our lives. We have enough. So why do you want to go find that? And I agree. There's all different spectrums of energies out there. And just with any type of human being, like we just said, that there's bad apples and good apples, right? So in the beginning, I didn't understand the differences of even how to discern spirit signatures. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But how to even discern the energies. I was happy to make contact. And what I believe, when I look back now, and this is hindsight, retrospect, I can say, well, I was always very positive about this tool. Therefore, I wasn't attracting those negative things. But I can also see if you have different intentions and you want those negative things, you're going to find them because it's out there. It's just, it's dualism. This is how the universe works. We have good, bad, up, down, we have the opposites. And there's a whole spectrum in between, and the same with humankind. So spirit signatures, what I started learning as I progressed with this tool, was that there were different feelings when I would connect with these energies. And I would feel it through the movement of the planchette. That's where I started feeling it. Now I can just feel the energies around me, kind of like my spidey senses are out there. I could feel it in my aura. I could feel the different energies. And I know the different beings that I'm in communication with when they come through because of how the planchette moves and also how I feel. That's called spirit signatures. We all have our own unique frequency, just like our fingerprints. Because, our fingerprints, we have all these different ridges. It feels like that too. It's something very similar. And so when I started to distinguish that, then I knew who I was getting. And now when I work the board, there's one group of beings, I call them the guides, that come through every time. That's just who comes through. And if there's anybody else that's going to come through, then they're the ones that are like the master and mistresses of the ceremony. I used to have Wilma Jean years ago, and I write about this in my book, The Spirits of Ouija, 4 Decades of Communication, how to get in touch with those different types of spirit signatures and beings. And they become your bouncer, your guardians that help you moderate your sessions, if you will. So now it's just the guides that come through. That's where my frequency, my energy is, and I'm just really good at channeling them any and every time. In fact, when I do my psychic readings, that's the beings I pull through that bring through the messages for my clients. Same thing. That's who I work with every single time. And sometimes somebody else wants to come through, and it could be a new being, or somebody has a question about related to them, their spirit guides. I let them come through with my beings that bring them through. So it's like I have that safety net, you can call it that. But I have my bouncers. I have my bouncers. That's what I'll call them. My guardians.
So you can tell me, none of your business, Jim, but I was curious, how do you use, and this is also, I think, instructive for people, how they might be able to use it. How, not so much for clients, because we could talk about that separately, but how much do you use and how do you use the Ouija board for your life to enhance your life?
I love this question because it was a really incredible time when I started using the board this way. And this is the moment when everything shifted for me. And with this tool, meaning I was able to get out of the dead zone, I was just talking to deceased people and moving into other dimensions of consciousness. It was, again, a progression. So the year was 1989. So I started in 73. Here I am 16 years later, 1989. I moved to Texas. Just got out of graduate school. I met some other clinicians. I was a psychotherapist back then. And they were very interested too in using this tool. And I said, why don't we just use this tool to talk to our higher selves, our greater selves? That part of myself that's my soul self, that's beyond just my corporeal existence, my own inner wisdom. But now we're going to go beyond that. The part of me that's greater, that's, my consciousness. Let's go out there and do this. So that's what we did. We spoke to our higher selves. We did it for about 4 years. Other beings started coming through. But in that 4-year time, we really learned to fine tune, tap into that part of ourselves, which when you learn to tap that with or without a Ouija board, you don't need a Ouija board to do this. But this is some of the things I teach. When you learn to do this, you start to awaken the sleeping giant within, which is this wellspring of information and guidance and wisdom. And that's where your channeling really comes through. It starts to bubble up and percolate, where you start having incredible dreams, synchronistic events happen. You start thinking of great ideas. You lose a sense of fear in life because now you realize there's so much more, and you just pull that up from inside yourself. It makes you super creative. And when you tap it, it's really hard to turn off. I don't want to turn it off. In fact, I'm working with other kinds of techniques to open up that consciousness within myself, that sleeping giant that's within all of us. And so when I did that, that is when everything changed and I started bringing in these other dimensions. Because once I made that connection, and my guides call it plugging in, just like taking a cord, plug it into an outlet in the wall, you plug this part of yourself in, then you've got that current flowing through you. And it's really incredible for your own life. But once I did that, what I found was all these other beings wanted to communicate with me. I think I'd made myself a little more open as a receptor to channel, a vessel to channel other wisdom that could come through. And it just took me into other dimensions, such as the animals. I started communicating with the animals on the Ouija board, started communicating with the angelic realm, extraterrestrials, guardians, guides, ethereal beings. The dimensions go on and on and on. Once I fine-tuned and honed that own connection to my higher self, it just opened up the world.
So that's kind of how you would envision maybe other people can use it. And is it a thing where, people will initially consult with you and then graduate to their own, or maybe they rely on you regularly as a reader? How does that relationship usually work?
Well, when I go and speak at events, I tend to teach as well, whether it's teaching how to use it just to communicate with what's in the room and in the building, we're just doing, ghost hunts and stuff. But what I throw into it, though, is also you can use this to talk into other dimensions and also communicate with your animals. People love that. So I sit down and teach that. And I talk about ways to do this. Now, when people come to me, I'm not using the board to read anymore. Years ago, I did. I did that exclusively for, quite a few years. 2014 to about 2018, 19. Around that time, it was 2019, I jumped off the board and started doing readings directly because I was already channeling the guides directly. I hear them and feel them, and then I could just say what I'm hearing from them. And they give me visions, they give me colors, sounds, words, stuff. And I just start letting it come out. It's basically channeling. So it's no different than me using the tool. It's just faster. It's faster now if I allow them to channel directly through me and hear them that way. So now my work is all, when I work with people, it's all off the board in terms of giving readings.
So I've got to ask you a question. It might sound like it's off the wall, but does the Ouija, and I guess I really shouldn't say the Ouija, but the spirits you connect with, do they have a sense of humor ever?
Oh my gosh, that's so freaking funny. In fact, there's been times they say, "Lighten up! You're too serious. Just laugh," and they'll say something funny. They like to make words into acronyms. They do this a lot. So one time I said, "Okay, then take the word shit." I said, "Make that into an acronym." And they said they thought for 2 seconds and said, "Start here in truth." SHIT, start here in truth. And I was like, what? Okay, I started throwing more words and seeing, where they would go with it. And they are funny. They are super funny. And they'll say things to me, they're funny just to shift the energy sometimes, or just to show that they have humor. And I find this especially with the animals, there's a lot of humor. Like a little 2-year-old will say anything and they're just funny. And they do have a sense of humor, especially animals. I've heard the angels be funny. Extraterrestrials, it depends what type you communicate with. Some of them could be really, really funny. The guides are super funny. Spirit guides, I often hear spirit guides being really funny. There's always a sense of humor, and I'll tell you what it is. They're mimicking or parroting us. They want to share and connect and relate to us. The more you can connect with them, then they start to use that humor. They find it within you, and they start to mimic it back because they know that's a way you're going to relate with them as well. Humor's universal. You can make just your facial expressions, even with humanity. You can do funny things, and somebody in another country who speaks a different language is going to understand.
Have you ever been at any time frightened during a Ouija session?
Well, frightened, not really frightened, but I would say I was upset one time this is earlier on. Now we're talking the early 80s. So at this point, gosh, I think I've been using it about I think it was 81, about 8 years, where my brother and I sat down and we had this being come through who just started cussing at me. And I've never had that before. And he's like, "What's going on?" I said, "I don't know. I'm not going to put up with this though." And I just stopped, took the board, that little board that's back there by the light. That was my board I had back then. And I just took it, wiped it off ceremonially, just wiped it off like this, my sleeve. And he goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "Well, I'm going to clean it off and just, we're not going to do this. I'm saying we're not talking to you anymore." And sure enough, I blocked it. And then what came through after that was my spirit guide, Wilma Jean, who was with me for about another 15 years on the board. So was it frightening? No, it was strange. I didn't like it. And people will write to me and say, "Yeah, somebody said this to me and that on the board, and they were cussing and saying this and telling me bad things." And I said, "Well, you know a lot. That means you must have stayed on the board for," "Oh yeah, I talked to her for about 30 minutes. I go, "Why? Why?" It's like you get a crank phone call.
Right.
Why
hang
stay
up.
on the crank? Yeah, hang up. And that's what I did. And that right there sets a boundary. Sets a boundary with the spirits, sets a boundary for yourself, set a boundary with my partner at the time, which was my brother. And it says, no, my intentions are, I'm only going to get things that actually help or are inspiring or informational. I'm not going to do something that's going to cuss at me. And not that I don't like cussing. It's like, just don't direct derogatory comments with cussing entangled in it at me. That's not going to happen. So that was it. But never scary, Jim, never scary. And I think it's because I never use it in a scary, spooky way for me.
Right. So let me ask you this. People who use the board, let's say they go in with all good intentions and so forth, and they're not trying to, and if they have a partner, for example, they're not trying to fake anything. But let's say they get a message. How can they discern if it was actually real or if it's something that they did through the ideomotor effect and did subconsciously and didn't realize it? Because I could see myself doing this and getting a message and saying, was that really me, or was that the board, or was that a spirit? Is that a problem that particularly newer users have? And how do you get through that and be able to separate something that's real through something that may have been generated unintentionally and subconsciously?
That is really part of the progression of using this tool. as I tell people too. I said, and even for me in the beginning as a child at the age of 8, when I was using it, I was like, I don't know if this is real. I don't know, but it's pretty interesting. I'm pretty intrigued by it. And with different people, I get different results. And so it was more experimental. What I tell people and work with people all these years using this tool is I say, don't just get excited about your messages. Consider it entertainment in the beginning. And consider it entertainment for quite a while, actually. Now, people say, well, how long is quite a while? You mean I can't trust the message? I said, absolutely not, until you fine tune yourself and you become a good channeler. Are you good at channeling right now off the board? No, I don't even know what channeling means. And I'll say, okay, that's where we have to start now. We have to learn to tap into your higher self, learn to tap into that part of yourself, and learn to hear messages internally. And if you can start doing that, and through meditation, there's all kinds of exercises I teach. But if you can do that, then you can start fine tuning your abilities to channel. So you start getting really solidified, legitimate messages that are meaningful and can help you in your life. But that doesn't happen right away. And it typically doesn't happen right out of the box. And as I tell people, I say, write down your message you're getting. And a lot of times it's going to be gobbledygook. It's going to be Greek. You're not going to understand what it says. Don't make something out of it that it's not. If there's words that are messed up, let it be. Don't try to decipher and say, oh, this is what it said. Don't guess. You can make associations, but move on and say, hey, I want clarification. Try that message again and keep going until you start getting messages that are like sentences to paragraphs. And then at that point, when you write things down, you have a record now to go back through and you can say, was it consistent over time? What it's been telling me is actually what's going on in my life. Did it inspire me and help me in positive ways? Am I learning something maybe about the afterlife that I can go look up and I can find verification on that, confirmation, validation? Then you might go, oh, I got something here. It's because I'm learning how, as the operator of this tool, to channel. And that does take time to get that. It really does. But with practice, patience, and perseverance, the 3 Ps, you definitely can get there and do this, but it does take time. And there's having a serious nature and the intention behind it of what you want to accomplish with this tool. Really, it's yourself. This tool here, that's what you're going to get. But again, you don't expect great things to come out of the box. Now, having said that, I have seen some really wonderful things happen for people the first few times they've sat down on the board. Legitimate stuff, deceased relatives coming through that had spot on message to give them. I've seen people release their grief over somebody's death. I've seen some incredible things. We've seen some great messages and watch people do this. And I've done it too with somebody new at the board where things don't usually happen right away, but they can, and they have with me with some people. And I'm like amazed and blown away. I don't know anything about this person and the messages I get, or we're getting together. And when I sit down with a new person, the energy is different. We're not together yet as a channel, because we haven't practiced together. But still getting those kind of messages makes me 100% believer in this tool and in myself as a channel and in the person I'm working with. So yeah, those things can happen. But for the most part, it does take time to get the legitimate message that you want to be able to really hold dear and find truth in those.
So you mentioned the past relative. So let's say that cousin Fred passed away, and I was very close with cousin Fred, and I really want to get a message to him or get a message from him, know that he's okay, those kind of things, whatever it might be. So you would say that the Ouija is a valid way to try to do that, right? Is that right?
Yes, I am saying that. I had somebody just reach out to me recently from the UK, don't know this person at all, but she's been reading my stuff and watching my videos and said she had an opportunity to reach out to her deceased son. And she really wanted to. That was her intention. She's doing it by herself, and she's getting incredible messages that to her feel very real, and it's helping her with her grief. So I say, and I call this Ouija therapy. I've said that before, tongue in cheek, because it really can be very therapeutic and very healing for people, especially talking to some deceased relative that you were very close to. Maybe it's a son, a spouse, and I've heard she's not the only story. Many stories of this type of thing that's happened for people where they do have some closure, or they gain some information, or even get some guidance. Maybe they're their new spirit guide is going to hang around for a while and help out. So yeah, it can be very healing, very healing.
Now, obviously, you take the board very seriously and see it as a tool to channel and contact the other side and so forth. But it's always been marketed as a game. Why was it marketed as a game if it's a serious tool? I mean, how did that happen and how has it continued? Because again, if you go into your local fill in the name of the blank big box store, it's right there on the game shelf. So how did that happen? Why does that happen? And why does it persist?
Well, when it was patented as a novelty item or game because that's the games companies would sell these items. There's no really where else to sell them. I will say this: stationery stores used to sell the planchettes. That's where those were first sold. But it just made sense to put this as a toy or game, a novelty item again, and that's how they patented it. So it stayed. It remained like that. That's how it's still patented as a novelty item or game, and it just stuck. But also, you think about this: if you're in marketing, you can think about how enticing it is to children. I mean, I was 8 when I got mine. I was enticed by it, intrigued, and I wanted one. And I'm not saying listen, people, I'm not saying go get one for your kid. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, children are the one that are usually more attached to the imagination or the veil from whence they came. They're closer to that other side and they're open to the spiritual or the magical, mystical stuff. And so they see this and it's kind of delightful for them. It can be. It was for me. When I discovered it, it was very magical and delightful. But here, I want to give a little disclaimer here, a waiver. I want to say, so let's say you have a child and it's at the toy stores, like you said, any big name, box name will sell them. The children says, I really, really want a Ouija board. And then if I was the parent, I would say, well, why is that? What is it about a Ouija board that it entices you? Because you could talk to ghosts. And then I'd say, well, you could probably talk to ghosts without a Ouija board. We could do our own little seance or something, but why do you really want one? That's what I would say. And find out, it may just be, oh, I want to know what happened to grandma when she died. Oh, well, let's have that conversation. I learned about the Ouija board from friends down the street. I didn't have one in my house. I learned from 2 little friends down the street who showed me what they did with it. And we were talking to one of their dead sister at the time, the twin. The older girl had a twin that died after birth, and we were talking to her, and she's growing up on the other side. I run home, tell my parents, "Oh my God, it's real. You could talk to the dead; they're still alive." And my mom said, "Well, where'd you get that from?" And I said, "Well, a Ouija board." She's like, "Oh, sure. That's real." I said, well, look, if you're not going to believe me, Santa Claus will. Remember, I'm young. I'm still mystical, magical, still thinking Santa Claus and all that.
Right.
Santa Claus brought me one. And my parents didn't have that conversation with me, but they saw me use it. They thought it was harmless. And they didn't have the fears. My mom came from a family that was, they were... Well, her grandmother, my great grandmother, was married. Her second husband was a mortician. He was an undertaker, and she used to hold seances. Her family did a lot of seance stuff, and they had no fear of the afterlife and death. And so that just carried on in my family. We talked about the afterlife. To this day, we still talk about dying and what that's about, and beings and maybe other dimensions and things we've seen. So it was just so normal in my family. It was just so normal for me to use it that it wasn't a scary thing. But I do say, if you have a child, ask the question, what intrigues them, and have another conversation. You'll be surprised at where it goes with it. And then maybe if you decide to get a board, you get it, you sit down with your child and use it together. Watch some of my shows. I talk about this. I have articles I write about using this tool with children in the house. And, I think there's always boundaries with things. You don't want to scare your child because they're going to see scary things on TV and on YouTube, which they could grab at a moment's notice on their phones and watch this stuff. And you want to set them straight to say, no, it doesn't have to be that way. So yeah, talk to them, have a conversation before you just go out and get this board.
Actually, it's a perfectly natural segue because you've become a children's author, right?
Yeah. So here's the book. I was on your show before and it spoke about this. It's When Cats Had Wings. And this book, you guys, this book right here, I actually wrote it with the help of my cat, Jack. Jack was very much alive when he told me he wanted to write a story. And remember, I've been talking to the animals on the board for years. Okay. So Jack came to me and said, I really want to be an author. I want to write a book about cats and people not being cruel to cats. He came from a very horrific background when I took him from this house. I rescued him from a house, but the truth is he really rescued me, but that's a whole nother story. So he says, I want to be an author like you. I see you write. I'm going to write too. So he started this story when he was alive. He told it to me in the afterlife. We finally finished it when he's now in spirit. And this was his story. And it became this book, When Cats Had Wings. Sweet little story. And it's really about the unconditional love that the animal kingdom has for us, specifically in this book, cats, but also how they're angelic beings and they really come to us in our lives to rescue us. And that's a story for children of all ages. So the one I'm working on now, it's children's from the age of 6 to 9. And the main character of the story, her name is Daphne, and she has a black cat with little stardust. There she is. There she is, and that's her little twinkle cat. He has little stars on his body, and the story is it's called Daphne and the Starry Mantis Beans. And she meets them, and they go on these wonderful adventures. In the first book, and this is a picture from the first book. It's called the Awakening Crystal. The Awakening Crystal. And this is where I am. That's the working title right now, but it's a series where she goes out and has all these incredible adventures with the mantis beings, and they become her friend, and they take her to magical places. And her cat's always her sidekick that goes with her, and she gets to help humanity and rescue worlds and play and have a lot of fun. So this is going to be just a charming, charming story. This is the Awakening Crystal. So, and here's the crystalline fox. She has to sing a lullaby to. And it's super sweet. And the mantis beings are there as her friends and guides, but she gets to do all the work and have all the fun and play. But yeah, so this is something I'm working on now. I really enjoyed writing that book with Jack. And now I'm just writing on my own with my own ideas and my own images and my own storyline, where the storyline with When Cats Had Wings was Jack's storyline that I put into a poetic form. But that was definitely channeling. Now, I am channeling this. I have these ideas. I'm channeling these mystical worlds. I'm sitting down and allowing it to flow through me. And so I'm using channeling in a different way, not so much on the board. But I will say this, and this is what you're going to ask me. Did the Ouija board have anything to do with this?
Mm-hmm. Did it?
See,
did the Ouija board have anything to do with this?
Right. And I know how Jim works. Okay. So when I did When Cats Had Wings, part of that was channeled through the board. Part of it was channeled when Jack was in spirit form, direct channeling. Okay. This book I'm doing now is direct here. However, I've been using different techniques to awaken my third eye. And some of the techniques I'm using has allowed me to be able to see into the other dimensions better than I had as a child. As a child, I used to always see an imaginary playmate. It was not imaginary. I would see the guardians who would come to see me. These were spirit guides. I would see ghosts. I would see some extraterrestrials. I would see a lot of interesting things. So as I got older, I noticed I'd closed some of that down, and I started working with this I'll say it's interdimensional being it's from another dimension, who came forward because I was asking to open up my third eye again to start to work on that. And he came forward and gave me a lot of information. He said, we have to do it through direct channeling, and he gave me exercises to do. Those exercises, voila, helped a lot. I began to see some really interesting things. I will say this story about Daphne and the Starry Mantis Beans is inspired by one of my own encounters.
Oh my. Oh my, that's interesting. That's interesting. Yes. So if folks want to connect to all of your content, everything you do, whether it's the children's books, your expertise on the Ouija, everything you've written about the Ouija, or possibly to consult with you, where could they go?
Well, KarenADahlman.com. It's right here. Down below, KarenADahlman.com. I'm also Karen A. Dahlman on all social media. Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube as well. So connect with me there. You could reach out to me on any of those platforms, as well as email to Karen at KarenADahlman.com to reach out to me. And then check out my YouTube channel. I actually took a break from it for about a year, and that was done by design. I took a break from a lot of things, social media related wise. I was doing some other things in my life, and I wanted to focus there. But I have 200 plus videos on all about this topic of spirituality, paranormal, and of course, my favorite tool of channeling, the Ouija board. And I do talk about ways to be able to channel the animals. People love that. And there's a great video on that. You can also channel any level of consciousness, including plants, trees. So I do some videos on that as well. So check out my books. I've got a bunch of them behind me there. But if you want to learn how to use this tool, the Ouija board. Check out The Spirits of Ouija, 4 Decades of Communication. If you want to get more into some of these more advanced topics of channeling yourself, check out my Spirit of Alchemy, Secret Teachings of the Sacred Reunion, because that really goes into how to do these techniques yourself without a board and still be able to channel your higher self and ultimately source wisdom. So all my books tap into that. Even Jack's book, the fun about this book, but also it gets into learning to be open to the other beings that we share our world with, that they also have a message to provide. So you can learn a lot from the animal kingdom without using a board.
Karen, you have so much knowledge, and always great to be with you. Happy Halloween. I hope you have a great, I won't say spooky season because it doesn't need to be spooky with the Ouija as we've discussed, but I hope you have a great season, and we look forward to speaking with you again.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, Jim, and goodbye to everybody. Until next time, hey, get out there and have a spooky Halloween. I think spooky's still fun.
There you go. There you go. And thank you for tuning in to the Paranormal Podcast. I appreciate it. If you enjoy what we do and you're watching on the YouTube channel, please make sure that you subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Make sure that you follow. If you become a super fan and want to get the whole back catalog, go to jimharold.com/plus. That helps us a whole lot. And most importantly, share the show today with a friend. Send them a link. We don't have those big marketing budgets, but we have something more important. We have you. We'll talk to you next time. Have a great week, everybody. Stay safe and, yes, stay spooky. Bye-bye.